That's so funny.
What's up? We are live. It's time for hashtag
T
Q.
I.
F. That's right. It is the Friday night lineup of Must See YouTube. We kick things off with the Tex-Trek stream. We're going to be talking all about this week's episode of Star Trek Discovery, and then we're going to follow things up with Starfleet Boy After Dark.
It's our own reunification or unification.
But yeah, this is a special Thanksgiving weekend stream. This is a Black Friday stream.
I think we should focus on the less the mercantile part and more the families coming together.
Yeah, we should call it a Black Alert. Black Alert.
Black Alert.
Black Alert.
My store should have done that. Fuck.
PQI Black Alert Friday.
I twote the tweet. I tweeted the twote. I twoted. Wow.
Okay, so the tweet has been twat.
Oh.
And we have people watching, so we're just gonna go ahead and kick things off proper. But I'm Fathery.
This is Brian.
This is Starfleet Boy.
And this is Dave.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 125th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we talk all about Star Trek all the time. And tonight we are here to talk about Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 7, Unification III, written by Kirsten Beyer and directed by Jon Dudkowski, who I believe is a newcomer to the Star Trek franchise. This is his directorial debut for Star Trek. But yeah, this
so you get Carl Weathers to direct an episode.
Yes.
Maybe, I don't know. He's done all right on the other Star franchise so far.
We're going to be talking all of
these are very different shows, though.
I'm trying to give a little stealth nod to Starfleet Boys podcast.
Thank you.
Go on, Fathery.
Well, yeah, this was a very interestingly titled episode because it's like a direct sequel, even though it's not, but I guess it kind of is, to Unification 1 and Unification 2, the two-part story arc from Next Generation Season 5, or also known as the TNG episodes that have Spock in them.
Yeah, it's kind of like an epilogue or in those old 80s movies, comedies, where they'd freeze frame at the end and tell you what happened to all the characters immediately. That was the 80s freeze frame.
Because it's like, this is what happens 1,000 years ago after all these people are dead. Yeah, that's what our story is about. I am just going to summarize things real quick by saying the official synopsis from Memory Alpha, and then I'll kind of expand upon that with spoilers to give us a recap of this episode. But the official synopsis reads, while grappling with the fallout of her recent actions and what her future might hold, Burnham agrees to represent the Federation in an intense debate about the release of politically sensitive but highly valuable burn data. It's kind of a boring synopsis. I'll just expand on that with spoilers.
What's the one Measure of a Man? If you were to describe Measure of a Man, it would be like I guess you could dramatically say Data, stands on
Data's
trial
right to
for his life.
exist hangs on the balance of a courtroom decision.
Yeah.
But you could also put it boringly too if you wanted.
Yeah, it's like the remember the old Next Generation Next Time things on that they would have, where they were all had this overly done guy talking about narrating what it was going to be
Next
about.
time on an all-new Star Trek.
Down. That music that he used to play.
Chakotay's on the run from the Romulans.
That never happened. But
They totally
will Chakotay die?
hire that guy and bring it back.
For real.
Just to expand upon that with spoilers, Burnham finds out her brother Spock lived on after she traveled into the future to set Romulus and Vulcan on a path to reunite. And after many centuries, the Romulans finally moved back in at home on planet Vulcan. And together with the Vulcans, they renamed the planet Navari. And they now, in this far-flung future, distrust the Federation for actually pretty understandable reasons. But Burnham has to prove to them that it's a good idea for them to turn over the data they have that can shed more light on the mystery of the burn and help Burnham eventually solve the burning question of what exactly happened to destroy all the dilithium.
This episode is the mystery of the burn and the mystery of the Burnham.
Yeah, that
on an all-new episode of Star Trek.
Fun hasn't gotten stale in the last couple of months.
Burn, baby, burn. Next
at
time
this one.
on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
We should each give our opening statement and just kind of express our broad feelings and reaction to this episode. Brian, I know you as kind of our Vulcanoid expert, our Vulcan/Romulan historian. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, so I'll let you kick things off, and then we'll just go around and each share our statement. But what was your general reaction to this one?
Because my Star Trek role-playing game is all tied into Romulan and Vulcan history and stuff, I was paying very close attention and very excited about this episode just based on the title alone. I guess I really like it's a kind of a meditation on who do we trust with power. Do we trust Tilly to be first officer? Do we trust Michael to be envoy? Do we do the Navarians or the Vulcanoids trust the Federation with these powerful secrets? Do we trust our mom not to throw us under the bus in front of the court?
That's the universal constant. Moms will do that.
Yeah, she brings up some really bad stories about when she was a little girl. But yeah, and so I thought that was wonderful that it was all very unified thematically once you stopped and thought about it a little bit, and I liked that a lot. I thought it was terribly well written. I mean, maybe it was a little of that Babylon 5 pretentious writerly dialogue that Dave so hates, but I really liked some of the little statements and comments, and even the comment about how the little homilies and stuff are not always the end all and be all of existence was in fact a bit of a homily in of itself. And I enjoyed that. And they were actually pretty thought-provoking little comments on the world of Star Trek and how we see Star Trek and how we see these iconic foundational elements of Star Trek and how do we reinterpret them. So I really liked how it was written. I like the idea, the other big theme, facts have context. And facts are not just facts. Facts have context, and you need to take that context into account when you're using and manipulate, when you're using facts and distributing facts or collecting facts. You need to take the context into account. So all of that was really good, and I did like what little bits of Romulan and Vulcan culture and everything that we got. kind of disappointed we didn't get to go beam down to the planet and just see a better glimpse of what this unified society looks like. I mean, I get they couldn't show us a whole city, but they could have shown us some sort of bit of a scene on a street or something that would kind of
Every episode in of the last several episodes has had some cool planet-side locale
That's
shots.
why this one didn't, because budgets.
No, I can totally understand that you've got to do the all on the starship episode sooner or later. I just would not have picked Vulcan or Navar as the planet to do that with. But if we'd gotten down to the planet, this probably would have been my favorite episode of the series so far. But because we didn't get to go down to the planet, I'm still going for that Trill.
It's just like a little Brian has in your ideal version. There's a little 5-minute epilogue where they just go shopping on Navar.
Yeah, I mean, or something like that.
Some of those Saru and President Tarina scenes, they could have been walking around on the streets or something.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, they could have knocked together a little Vulcan temple to have the Quorum meet in, and had a couple scenes out in the hallways, and you could have had Vulcan kids and Romulan kids playing over. And what would that look like? That could be amazing,
Remember when Spock was taunted mercilessly? That's what it was.
I know. That's why we could have some alternate version of that. Some new, happier version of that. Yeah. That could have been right there. That would have been like this thing that kind of brings home this new world.
Yeah, Vulcan kids are assholes.
Dropped off Burnham's mom there with the explicit "you know where to find me." Does lead me to believe we will first, maybe not this season, but maybe this season we will see it, I think.
Fingers crossed.
Okay, Starfleet Boy, give us your opening statement.
Oh, is he still on mute?
Can you guys hear me now?
There we go.
No.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Oh my goodness. I couldn't tell which phase was correct. I apologize. I guess I was super into what you were saying, what you guys were talking about, and that's one of the things that really excited me about this episode. All I want to say about it is that for me, it's a really nice ending to the Spock box set.
Oh yeah.
I like it in that sense. Like it does a great job of just wrapping up the Spock story. The epilogue, I think Dave you said that earlier.
Yeah.
I know it's called Unification 3, but it's the last disc in the box set for Spock.
Yeah. You're definitely looking at it. This is the Black Friday episode. You're looking at it from a mercantile perspective.
We still have all those Strange New World episodes.
You're welcome, CBS.
we still have all those Spock episodes of Strange New World.
Yeah, but this would always be the episode you put at the end of the box set. Yeah, even if they do a bunch of Ethan Peck stuff, this would still be the last episode you would watch
until we get to Unification 4.
Okay. Fair enough.
Do you really think that'll happen? Come on.
Well, we never thought we'd get to Unification 3.
That's true.
And this is also why I think the first episode being called That Hope Is You, Part 1, but there is no Part 2. The fact that there's a Unification 3 in the same season makes me think that, at some point in the future, there's going to be That Hope Is You, Part 2.
Right.
Maybe that'll help fill in like that gap year of Book and Burnham doing stuff. We'll do like a flashback episode or something. But if that's all you got, Starfleet Boy Dave, give us your opening statement, please.
Yeah, I like this episode for the most part. Did find I don't think that Brian, you alluded to sort of the writerly dialogue, and it was less that bothered me than some of the familiar Discovery, somewhat familiar, very heart on its sleeve emotionalism that's been prominent for much of the season was a little heavy on me. This one, stuff with Tilly and Burnham, or Burnham and Book. There was, or Burnham and her mom. Yeah. It's just a lot of emotion, and I can't cram that much into the holiday season.
I will say, this was the first episode out of all of Discovery where on first viewing I started to feel, Okay, maybe now I understand why some people are tired of this being the Michael Burnham show. I kind of felt like at some point near the end, they felt like they crossed the line with a little too much Michael. But then on rewatching it, I decided I was fine with it. But I will admit that I at least got a glimpse of that other world of all the people who think that she takes up too much of the show. After
Only glimpse of.
Yeah.
So it's a reference to the Romulan first episode.
Yeah.
Anyway, last week I was digging at the fact that they moved so many subplots forward. Here they essentially at least resolved in the short term Burnham's arc, which I liked too. And I wasn't sure where they were going there, and they resolved Tilly's instability, or rather that first empty first officer spot too. And I was pleased that they moved along so quickly on that front. I think what I liked most about the episode, though, was the way it reminded me of my favorite part about Star Trek much of the time is a good standalone episode. And I thought that it had some nice high concept stuff in it. The Quorum Milat from Picard, I had liked in Picard, but I felt like it wasn't until this episode that I really sort of saw in a way the value of their philosophy to its fullest degree. The idea of, and this is the part that felt like a standalone Trek episode, a classic one in the sense of putting an idea forth and making me really think about it somewhat. The idea that, like you were saying, Brian, that truth has to come with context, and that means you like in such a way that like humans don't normally think this way, where you are revealing any ways that doubts you might have, ways you might be emotionally compromised or politically compromised. And I thought that was a fascinating way to think about it. Father, remember when in the first episode, or was it the previous one, talking about the guy who they can smell lies or something like that? Who was it who did that? Was it the hologram, the doctor?
Oh, that was when they. I guess 2 episodes ago. That was Dr. Eli when they. When
I
they
couldn't remember if it was last episode or the previous one to that. And I was like, I think part of the reason, like I'm like, I don't know about that, is because we do always, we even if we don't lie, we direct people to the truths we want. And I am used to that as a functioning human being. So I was fascinated by an episode that sort of challenged that by showing that philosophy up in front and center. Thought that was a cool idea. And broadly speaking, although it's a bit of that's definitely presents Discovery as a unusual ship. Tilly's promotion was something that I liked as well. So
I will say
I give it a thumbs up in general.
Yeah, I that's a good point. I feel like this episode did, despite not being all that focused on the
it's my least favorite name of all the things they've named lately.
The QM. Despite not being focused that tightly on the QM, I feel like it did. I feel like I gained as much understanding about the QM as I did that from that first episode of Picard that actually showed it, that this was just as valuable as that what episode was at decoding them and figuring out what their
more
context
so to
is.
Me. The way that they force people to deal with unpleasant truths was definitely notable.
I think shout out to Sonia Son for bringing that to the performance. They were talking about on the Ready Room how they were kind of like hustling to figure out what the Quorum Milat were, because when they were introduced to Discovery, they hadn't really a big idea of it because it was in the other production, right? So it was a cool thing, like how it came to fruition. And Sonia Son did nail it. To me, I think that was I heard some folks griping about the coincidence, like how coincidental.
I'm about to gripe about that in my opening statement. Spoiler alert.
I'm willing to forgive the coincidence just because Sonia Son nailed it in terms of performance. It really exhilarated me, and I wanted her to be a Quat. After that, I was like, I don't care what excuse you come up with, it's cool. She's a Quat Milat or Koala Mullet or whatever,
Father, are you ready to drop some absolute candor on us?
Always. But yeah, when this episode's name was released online, it did get a lot of attention. It was obviously tied into Next Generation and that 2-part unification story. And I think some people might have really gotten excited about that. and I never really got too hyped for it, and I think that's probably good. But I was always curious, but I was never like super hyped. Some people were thinking this was going to be like a really big deal, and that might be like why this episode seems to be so divisive. I know online I see a bunch of polarized reactions. People seem to either love it or hate it. And
yeah, well, watching our comments as we do this live, we're hitting some of the not big fans.
But I mean, to me, it felt like an episode they get to in the middle of the season when they're like, okay, we've been spending a lot of money shooting on location, so we kind of need to do a cheaper one, and that way we'll have like some budget left, do some big stuff at the end of the season. So that's what it felt like, and we got what was really kind of a smaller episode for Discovery. There wasn't really any like big action sequence or any type of like new visual spectacle, and I actually found that bit refreshing. I liked that it was just kind of a real talky episode, and not a lot happens. But that's okay. It was just a smaller episode, and that was all fine by me. I think Discovery should probably go a little bit more tame from time to time.
It's not its natural speed, but
yeah,
but I agree with you.
And all that being said, because it's Discovery, it does have to lean into the emotional opportunities of any story, and I would say lean into them too much, and kind of typical of the show, run the risk of feeling forced with very like forced emotional moments and kind of lingering on things too long and drawing them out too long. And so I didn't like that part, but mostly I had a good time with this one. I love using the co-op a lot. They're one of my favorite new contributions to Star Trek of this new era of these shows being back in production. And I always love seeing Gabriel Burnham. I think that we get very interesting performances there, and I like seeing her and Michael get to spend time together here. But I really wish there was a more organic way to bring her back into the show than, oh, I just happen to be a Romulan nun right now at the moment that you needed one. So that I thought did kind of suck, but
I feel like that and maybe 7 of 9 having a connection on Picard.
Even that made more sense. Even that made like way more sense.
Yeah, I guess we talked about that at the time, and there's some truth to that.
Did they say that Gabriel showed up in the Vulcans or in the whatever the Vulcan star system?
No, she showed up on ESA 4.
Okay,
the planet that she was on in Perpetual Infinity and the Red Angel in season 2.
Okay, well, I mean, to some degree, then, given how far out that the planet that they were supposed to go to, that they talked about meeting was
Terralysium.
Yeah,
they were supposed to meet her at Terralysium, but she instead went back to the future and was on ESA 4.
Yeah, given how far away that is. Hanging out on Vulcan seems like a pretty obvious place to expect Michael to show up. I mean, that's her home. So if you're like, well, I don't know when and where she's going to show up, I'll just hanging out on Vulcan. It makes as much sense as anything for waiting for trying to reconnect whenever she does make an appearance.
There's also the idea that with all the time traveling that Gabriel Burnham did do, she maybe had seen kind of a la Doctor Strange, seeing all these possibilities, could have seen many different iterations, and maybe somehow subconsciously or whatever, even consciously, ended up on Vulcan, just like you said, waiting for Michael.
It'd be nice if they would throw out a line or two occasionally for that, if they were going to do that.
Yeah. But then Brian wouldn't have a role-playing game.
That's true.
The thing is, that's stuff that they didn't put that much thought into, and they could have easily came up with like a more organic excuse, I guess, to have her there, but they don't do that. They're just like, oh yeah, well I teamed up with the Romulan nuns, and that's why I'm here. I was brought here by some colonists on ESA 4, and I've just been hanging out with them. But now that you need a Romulan nun, here I go. So. Yeah, that was just an irritation to me. It didn't ruin the whole episode. I still had like a pretty good time with this one, and I liked it better on second watch because it is it is so talky. There is so much dialogue being shot around back and forth that I think on second watch you kind of pick up on some of the more nuanced stuff and some of the more details.
Yeah, I actually missed the line about explaining exactly what the relationship is between the Navari and the Burn and their opinions of all of that. I didn't quite catch it the first time, and I did the second. I was like, oh, this episode makes a lot more sense now that I heard that line. So,
Father, you want to hit us up with some specifics?
Yeah, we'll just go ahead and break the episode down, kind of scene by scene. I'll go and recap a little bit about it, and then open it up to discussion. But we'll just start, where the episode begins, and that is picking up after last week. Burnham has been fired by Saru from her first officer position. She is no longer number one on the ship, but she's able to, I guess, kind of de-stress from this by having sex with Book. So they are chilling on his ship in the shuttle bay, and it is confirmed they are getting it on. So it is nice to see, I guess, Michael kind of happy and have like a good romantic relationship.
Is that Netflix and chilling in the? What do you think?
I think they're just taking a nap together.
Well. Okay, that's what you got to tell like the kids in the room. But in addition to that, we also get Michael and Tilly in the science lab, and Tilly's kind of upset about Michael running off without telling her in the previous episode. But they are researching some more of the Burn investigation, and it turns out there was a science experiment called SB19 that would have had all kinds of recorded data. There were sensors that should have been scanning this whole vast area of space, like the whole galaxy, whenever the Burn happened. And for whatever reason, that data has never been made publicly available. And they think that might hold the secret to the Burn. And they've also narrowed down the source of it with the triangulation from the black boxes Burnham has been collecting. And so they kind of have an idea of where the original source of the Burn might have come from. They take this knowledge to Admiral Vance. Saru and Burnham present it
I wanted to say something real quick about the previous scene. It's something you mentioned earlier, and we'll
talk about it in a little bit.
Oh, okay. Okay, fine. That's fine.
But yeah, they present it to Admiral Vance, and he lets them know, okay, SB19, that was an experiment from Navari. Yeah, that's right. The Romulans and Vulcans have reunified. They've moved back in, and they were working on this form of faster than light travel as an alternative to using dilithium, to using warp drive. And that's one of these theories. There's supposed to be all of these theories about what caused the Burn. Well, some people think that SB19 might have done it, and the Vulcans and Romulans were pissed off that the Federation made them do this experiment, so they left the Federation, and they don't want to give over any of that information because they're scared someone else will use it and it would be unsafe and make something else bad happen. But now that he has Spock's sister, he sees her as an opportunity to extend an olive branch back to Navari and possibly wedge their way back into good terms with them. So what do y'all think about these setups that we get in the beginning of the episode?
I liked that they verified they ended up going where I was hoping they would go with the whole triangulation thing, that it was down at the picosecond level of the difference between the explosions in one star system and the explosions in another star system, because that at that level of specificity you probably would need the black box. Just a sensor satellite watching the ship explode, it might take a second or two for the combustion to actually kick off and blow the whole starship up. So that would be way too imprecise to do the sort of calculation that Michael is doing. So then it becomes, you have to have the black boxes, and the black boxes were probably all destroyed in almost every case, and it's kind of a miracle that you could find any. So yeah, it makes it more plausible that this is a thing that nobody else might have thought of trying, or just been lucky enough to find the boxes.
Okay, so this is the first, what I was going to say earlier when I interrupted Fathery, was this scene here. What you just said is wonderful, and I wish that had been in there instead of Tilly being mad at Burnham and all that stuff, because the first couple times I watched this episode, those things were extremely distracting, and I thought like it would have been nice to just have that toned down a little bit in this episode, because she's just like, I thought it was too emotional, and like what you just said, I wish that dialogue had been in that scene to kind of express some of the complexity of, I think you gleaned all that wonderfully, and it makes complete sense, and I make that canon, but I wish that was in the episode. That's really cool.
See, I don't know if I wanted that in the episode. I don't know if we need all that techno babble in it.
I do.
Don't you think that though that Tilly had a right to be angry at Burnham?
Yeah,
I do think
so.
She had a right to be angry, but like I just thought that it kind of got jumbled into this one episode where I wanted more of. This is the one episode for me personally where I wanted.
Why is she angry though? Like why? Like her? Okay, when she went and ran off with Giorgio to go on the secret mission, like how does that really impact Tilly?
Well, I guess it was because Tilly had to. She wouldn't have known like that. Tilly would, I guess, be especially under fire. She's running off all the time these days. But Tilly was, basically she had to choose whether to try and cover Burnham's ass with Saru and try and defend her. And
if she had known, if she had been told, would she not be presented with like the same choice? Like what would have been different if Michael had told her?
I think we know that she probably disagreed with her decision to do it in the first place. She said she might have done the same thing.
Because she's not mad at Michael for doing it. She's mad at her for not telling her. So
she said she wants the choice. She's tired of Michael.
But she got the choice. She still could have tried to cover for her or something.
Well, no, but Michael didn't come to her ahead of time.
It's one thing.
This is certainly Michael's theme of just not telling anybody. She just goes and does the thing. That's how Michael works.
She could have cooked up her cover story or whatever. You can't exactly work on that suddenly when Saru is grilling you. So yeah, I mean, were the writers a little imprecise about it, or about like why she would suddenly be mad now and not maybe have seen more of that building in the past? Maybe, but I get the idea. Basically, Burnham, if she's going to kind of go off half-cocked and sort of be this Starfleet rules breaker, somebody besides Saru should express displeasure with that, and she got elected.
And
I guess
she could also. Well, she might. I
guess this episode is where how like you were saying you could start to see some of the critiques about certain things that people were saying. This is where the emotional tone fatigue came in for me, is this episode, and it was centered around like kind of the Tilly storyline of her getting promoted. I thought it should have been a little bit more tidy than it was presented, and less emotional perhaps, and less like of all that stuff. I thought it took away from the emotion of the Spock legacy, which is what I was more interested in personally.
If you want to no prize it, you could say that after Michael gets herself kicked out of the second chair, out of the first officer position, Tilly is regretting telling Saru, "You've got to go tell the Admiral," and turning it into a big deal. And maybe she's angry at herself, but she can't admit that, so she gets angry at Michael for putting her into that situation. Now they don't actually say that in the episode. I'm just trying to kind of patch the thing together.
Yeah, people don't always react. Emotions don't always tumble out logically. They sometimes are messy. So yeah, I wouldn't have minded something like that.
Yeah. The thing I wanted to say,
I think Saru has been put in the position dramatically of being the tut-tut schoolmaster, and I know that the show also wants us to like him, and he can't be the only one who's ever doing that. And it's not like Nan was going to be the person to say, "Oh, don't do that."
Yeah.
She ain't on the show anymore.
Yeah.
they left.
I was using her as an example because she was a hard ass father.
Yeah. I did find myself wanting to say to Tilly, you do realize that she would have ignored orders and run off to save you too, right, Tilly? That she would have done the same thing for you that she did for Book. And I get why Michael doesn't throw that back in her face, but I kind of wish I felt like if I was in the room, I absolutely would have pointed that out to the two of them.
Here's a quick question: has Burnham's has her occasional rebellious escapades? have they ever gone completely wrong? Like, have they ever not produced positive results?
The first episode.
Yeah, the
Right.
battle.
But she actually did not get to do what she meant to do, right?
Well,
Yeah.
she meant to. They focus on the wrong thing. They always focus on like her mutiny starting the war, but she beamed over to capture Takuvma and like disgrace him and end the war.
She ended up accidentally killing him.
Instead, she killed him.
Yeah.
And got like the Klingons got like this martyr figure out of it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. But I guess like has everything since then generally been she took a chance and it usually pays off, which is very much a Star Trek tradition.
Yeah. There seems to be more complexities involved than say when Kirk does it. But yes, there seems to be a net benefit when you add up the negatives and the positives.
Yeah,
I think most of her going rogue ends up working out for the best overall.
Let's talk about the beginning with her and Book a little bit. Did anyone else notice that Book had his glowy forehead?
Yeah,
his
I wondered
magic
about
forehead
that
lets them
actually,
heal aliens. They put that back in there. I think that's just to remind us that there's a thing there that they haven't explained yet.
I completely forgot about it.
I did forget about it too.
And Slash didn't notice it.
That he can like heal animals or make plants grow with his glowy forehead.
Yeah.
I'm really
you think
worried.
he can control trees? Is that why the ship's wood? Did he grow this ship or grow the interior?
You know, I kind of don't really like the wood finish in technology in general, or
really?
Worf's station on the Enterprise that's wood. Like it never did anything for me, but I've grown to kind of like Book's ship, and it's kind of like wood carved interior. Yeah. But let's talk about that scene with Admiral Vance with Saru and Burnham presenting the data to Admiral Vance. I like this character the more and more I see of him, and I love like this one moment here in particular when it dawns on him that he has the sister of Spock, this hero to all of the Vulcans and Romulans, and he's like, this is our way to like reopen diplomatic ties to Navari, and like he gets like that smile on his face where he's like,
by the way, that
Eureka moment.
That frame that you pulled up of him is also kind of feels like it could be one of those meme-worthy things. Somebody like not necessarily a light bulb, but a slightly more mercenary. Oh, I can use this.
Right.
But I like it.
I like it too. I really like that scene because at the mention of kind of the update, Burnham's reaction to what's going on with Spock, like I just thought I took a lot of delight in that scene. Like when he mentions that Spock was the reason why Navari exists, and she just kind of like is shocked, and she hadn't looked him up yet, and I could totally relate to that. If you know someone's already dead, you might want to take your time finding out how they died or what happened, because
it'd be weird.
It'd be a weird thing. So like I like that
that is on Star Trek Enterprise when the Mirror Universe captain and what's her name, Hoshi look themselves up, and like she makes fun of his stalwart Prime Universe counterpart and stuff like that. But yeah, psychologically it makes sense. Most people might have some hesitation there.
Yeah.
Going into this, I always knew that they were going to have like a big obstacle trying to explain Romulans to the Discovery crew, because they're going to be like, what? Romulans? They were the people from that big war from 100 years earlier, and no one's ever seen one. Like, we don't know what they look like. And I thought it was so graceful the way like this elegantly explains all of that in just a couple of lines of dialogue from Admiral Vance, where he just says like,
history forgot this in your time.
Yeah, and your time, history forgot, but they and the Vulcans share a common ancestry, and hundreds of years after your brother tried to bring them together, they finally did. Like, that's all you need, and that explained all of it. And I was like, oh, that was like excellently written by Kirsten Beyer, who they call her like the keeper of the canon in the writer's room. So she definitely has like awareness of this type of stuff.
Yeah, it's certainly the sort of thing you don't want to dwell on too much, because unlike most things, Star Trek fans already know all this. So we don't want to sit watching our heroes get stuff explained to them that the audience already knows. So, the SB-19 project that those are like the transwarp conduits that the Borg had or something. It looks like, yes.
Yeah, but it's weird that they haven't talked more about like transwarp or quantum slipstream. I'm assuming that like those technologies got developed, but we're also kind of reliant on dilithium.
Well, if they require large amounts of power, then you're still going to need the dilithium.
Yeah, well, in Voyager there is a different crystal used for the slipstream drive. But
was there? Okay,
they mentioned that in the first episode of the season. Do
y'all think they're going to get around to this at all, or do you think it's just not of interest to them, and that they don't particularly want to delve into that like alternate means? The only thing that's going to be important is that the Vulcans were working on being able to transport ships.
I mean, I was kind of assuming that the ships of this era have slipstream drive. I just figured that's part of they're all equipped with it. But
Buck mentioned it about his ship. So they because this show has brought this stuff up, they do need to like try to clarify a little bit of this. And I think it's possible that they will. They do mention this type of stuff from time to time. So there is some. The show has some interest in exploring those things. But yeah, the SB-19. I think it's possible we might get more information on it specifically. It has like a weird name, SB-19. Yeah. It's hard not to think like COVID-19 now. When you hear like the number 19, it's like decades from now, like everyone alive in 2020 is gonna have like a PTSD flashback, like Detmer, whenever we hear like the number 19.
It is a cursed number. The Vulcans should have known. So the humans should have warned the Vulcans.
Yeah, there we go. Or breach 19, according to Trek on the Tube.
That's his headcanon. That's
until they say otherwise, I'm assuming it's some sort of transwarp network with gates and stuff like the Borg had. So
yeah, but it was interesting. I was thinking, if they think that the planet Navari is the possible source of the burn, someone should have mentioned that before episode 7 of the season. But then I remembered, there's a bunch of different theories about the burn. The admiral told them that before. He's like, we got more theories than we can shake a stick at. So they have their bases covered.
And
it also sounds well. No, you go.
Well, he also indicates that he knows that it's not the Vulcans' fault, so he wouldn't have presented that theory to begin with, because in his mind, it's incorrect information.
Yeah, it does sort of sound like the Federation concluded it wasn't SB-19, but that, or at least saw no reason for it to be. And apparently, the Vulcanoids have access to all the notes from building the project that they didn't share with anyone, and those notes apparently shed some light on things, at least from their point of view, that no one else got to see. But since they didn't share it, everyone just so it was. It's not necessarily a popular theory galaxy-wide. It might just be a popular theory on Navari.
I guess we have to call them Navarans now, right?
Or Navari? I was thinking it would probably... Well, I'm going to wait until it's canonical, but I'll just say Vulcans and Romulans.
I mean, Vulcanoids they've called Romulans Vulcanoids before. So...
I'm a droid and you're annoyed.
Get out.
Let's move on. Let's move on to the mission to Navari. The admiral says he's going to send her there, and wants like the big headline. I think it's kind of weird he uses the term headline, but Spock's sister returns, or whatever he said. So Michael kind of reflects back on Spock, and this allows them to remind the audience about their connection. But she has some flashbacks to the last time she saw her adopted brother, and remembers, growing up with him in the house of Sarek, and even shows Book this recording of old man Leonard Nimoy Spock. Really cool to see Nimoy's face on a new episode of Star Trek, even if it is reused footage. But
and of course now, having seen him in Star Trek 09 and stuff, that's practically young man Spock.
Right. True. Good point.
1991 Leonard Nimoy. But we get to re-explore that notion of the Romulan Vulcan reunion being an important thing to Spock, that I guess he dedicates the last couple of decades of his life to seeing that dream realized. And Stamets has his new Spore Drive interface, so that they're able to load up the Spore Drive. We finally get to see the disk Disco A do the spore jump. The big question, I think, was what happens to the nacelles, but the detached nacelles gets reattached to the ship, and when it does its little spinneroonie move to spore jump, and they go to Navari, where they are greeted by the president, Tarina, and she's basically like, y'all can't have this SB-19 data, so please stop asking about it, or I'm going to tell you to leave. And a little hostile because they keep poking at this thing, but Michael is able to use, I guess, like the traditional Vulcan sense of ceremony against them, and invokes the Takal in Ket, which is when you're presenting a scientific hypothesis, and there's this whole Vulcan ceremony where the Vulcan Science Institute has to come and question your hypothesis, and they make like this big deal about like this debate. And once you invoke it, they have to go through with it. And she explains all this to Saru, and so we're basically going to get a big kind of a courtroom scene or like a debate scene, and that's kind of what the episode will be about.
Was it like a thesis defense?
Well, it's kind of like the idea of science is always about like presenting a theory, a hypothesis, and then it's like, well, okay, here's what I think. Now come at me and come question me. And good science is supposed to like invite being attacked from like every possible angle and see if it holds up or if it doesn't.
Yeah, a thesis is not a bad way to think of it, though, I think.
I guess to me it felt more. And maybe I just misunderstood things. For me, it felt more like the quorum was there to gauge the ritual was there to gauge whether or not somebody was qualified to have access to certain information, and you have to prove your purity of purpose.
Well, that's what they said was the big part of it, is that it's almost kind of like ad hominem type of like attack of the presenter's character.
Yeah,
like,
so,
are they even like worthy or reliable? Should we even pay attention to them?
Yeah,
that's kind of like the big tradition of it. But
I missed. Did they say that has the Koat Malat, which was a very small segment of Romulan society, do we know what its standing is in the unified society?
They are apparently all the adjudicators for this sort of thing, so clearly they're.
Did they say all of them? Okay, that's what I wasn't sure on.
So I don't know if they do not adjudicators, advocates. Yeah. I don't know if they do like advocates for other interactions or not, but they do advocates for this.
You know what weirded me out? And this is maybe just a weird. I'm so used to sci-fi names not calling rulers of the world presidents. I think we always want it to sound more exotic in America, where the show's made.
Doctor Who has been doing Time Lord presidents for a long time.
Yeah, but that's because they wanted to sound exotic, so they set it up to use the US
exotic for them.
Yeah.
So I was weirded out. Yeah, that that Navari had a president. I was just like, that doesn't sound right. Can't they be a chancellor?
Well, it did seem weird that you put the Romulans and the Vulcans together and you came out with president. It's not like it should be praetor or senator or something from the Vulcan High Command, counselor or something.
Chief counsel or something.
High counselor.
It would make sense that it's a president to me, because the president of the Federation, when they left the Federation, they were like, we'll just keep the same structure of government and use it within our smaller group here. So now we have a president of Navari.
And again, it could be a word that just the universal translator says president is the best fit.
This is a low-level complaint. It's just one of those things that somehow to my ears just didn't sound right.
No, I liked it because they don't have many presidents besides like the president of the Federation in Star Trek. So I thought they should sprinkle in a few more. But this also was a slight irritation for me in another way, just that we've seen the same formula in season 3 of Discovery a lot, where they show up to a planet. They're like, oh, what are these people like in this time period? And they're going to be kind of dickish at first, but then we're going to do something like to prove ourselves to them. And then they're going to be nice at the end. It's just like I already felt it, as soon as they spore drive jumped over here, I already felt it falling back into that same formula.
Well, before they did the spore drive, they said these people are going to be dickish. Basically, they. I'm not saying that it isn't a repetitive plot line, but they did at least outright state, heads up, they're going to be a problem. Be on your A game, bring your A game.
As a plot, it's a little bit dodgy, but I think that's kind of like the standard in the 32nd century. Everybody's panicked right now.
They're on high. Everyone's kind of got a wall up, right?
Yeah.
So to speak.
Yeah.
I think that also one thing that I really enjoyed, though, is that I did get the sense that these are Romulan Vulcan culturally mixed Vulcanoids, I really did get the sense that there was something new here that we were being presented with, and there was like an interesting, again, it was, for me personally, it was too little in this episode. I think we could have lessened some of the other stuff and gotten more of this kind of stuff, but I loved what we got. What we got was really compelling, I think.
Yeah, and Tarina herself, she does seem like a little less traditional Vulcan. She's like a little bit more overtly emotional, just a tiny bit by human standards, but for a Vulcan, she's extremely expressive and kind of moody.
They do take the Quorum as an opportunity to lay out the three big cultural constructs that exist on the planet.
And that was awesome too.
I did like that there were three, that they didn't just all become one culture. There's still, things are complicated down there, and I like that.
Yeah,
it works.
It's not monocultural like a lot of the planets are presented. It's like a tri-culture, trinary culture, I guess.
Yeah. A good lesson to learn from places from stuff like Bajor and on DS9, or eventually some of the stuff with the Klingons on Next Gen.
Now,
I love the Spock playing the Spock videos. By the way, that was great. I mean, it was pure fan
You really
service.
can't go wrong with showing Leonard Nimoy as
I've seen some people question how would that have been recorded but if you're paying attention at the events of that episode, there's a very obvious explanation that I'll go over it when we get to the Gorn Eggs at the end of the show. But let's talk about the Quorum itself. When everyone beams aboard, we get the three different types of representatives. By the way, that new transporter, it just beams people in it's so fast.
I think they were just using their personal transporters. I think transporter room is just a formality at this point.
Now.
Well, let's talk about these the three judges, or the three peers that we meet. There is Navari, who is a Romulan elder, and he's seeking greater, I guess, self-governance as how they describe it, but I guess he wants the Romulan, traditional Romulans to have a little bit more independence on Navari. And then we meet Vakir, who is a very traditional Vulcan. He is actually the young leader of a sect of Vulcan purists, and he is the most Vulcanish of all the characters in the episode.
Actually, Burnham is.
Then we meet Shira, who speaks for the Romulo Vulcans. So I guess they're they're a type of merged culture. That's we're a little bit Romulan and a little bit Vulcan.
She's a centrist.
So the way that they talk to her later in the episode is kind of her moderate in the middle politics does get specifically criticized. And then President Tarina is there's actually another person coming aboard. The Quorum Malat, the Romulan nuns from Star Trek Picard. They handle all of the advocacy stuff from now on our planet. And this one has a particular interest in you, Michael Burnham. So who can it be? There's this big buildup to the reveal, and the nun removes her veil, and it's it's Mama Burnham. So we get to have Michael.
Always a game of chess with the Navarans.
we get to have Michael and Gabriel Burnham reunited, and it was a kind of a joy for me to see Michael happy, because we've seen her be miserable so much. And so the two of them get to walk around and catch up a little bit. And, being the Quorum Malat that she is devoted to this life of absolute candor and all about, honesty and speaking the truth. And there's this big concern that this is going to be a hard thing for Michael to accomplish, and the Quorum Malat only bind themselves to lost causes. So that kind of sets up the stakes. The tables are against her. There's going to be a very difficult challenge to face. And so what do we think about, like, now that we've met the quorum and established the rules of it?
I guess one thing I wanted to point out that I didn't catch the first time, they show up and basically Michael throws away or at least seriously threatens any chance for a diplomatic reconnection between the Federation and Vulcan, all over getting this data. She decides, without apparently consulting Saru, as far as I can tell, to say the data is more important than getting Vulcan back in the Federation. And if I have to piss these people off to get the data, I will do so. I thought that's a very Michael choice, but it fits her personality. But I was like, whoa, we're not screwing around here. It's the solve the burn or nothing.
I hadn't thought of that either.
That was super evident though, because Saru was like, "I hope you're prepared." He was like, "What's the cat?" Whatever. And then what I liked about the president character, I loved her a lot, was that she's like, you basically put me in a position diplomatically where I can't refuse, but at the same time, she kind of gives her a bone. She throws her a bone when she like holds her hand and says, "Just tell the truth. Most importantly to yourself," because she's like, "I see right through you. You're just." Like I already know she already knows the outcome.
I don't think she does.
No, she doesn't. Like
she's hoping for a better outcome.
Of the episode is about Tarina changing her mind.
Yeah,
you're right. So, but it's like I think she's hoping for Michael to be Spock's sister, like to represent that, and she's disappointed. I guess that's what I meant by that. Like she's hoping for the outcome to be that Michael redeems herself, because right now she's just like, she even says it. You risk being known as a dissembler. Spock's sister
will always
be known as a dissembler,
like
ruining a society, like a homewrecker, basically.
Isn't dissembling like just making excuses or
a liar? Yeah.
I thought it was liar, but I don't know.
Yeah, it is a liar. You're right.
Okay.
Right.
So the fear was that Spock's sister, it would be devastational to the society that was kind of forged by Spock. I assume there's like statues of Spock all over the planet. I mean, we don't know. It
would just be a very big disappointment.
I'd like to think that hope that the Vulcans maybe dropped a little bit of that fetishism in favor of logic and weren't so big on weren't necessarily tied
these are the people.
I'm sure, but the Romulans,
Sirach's dick for thousands of years. So
see, I can see the Vulcans might not be all that upset if Spock's sister turns out to be a loser, but the Romulans are a completely different kettle of fish as far as how they view the universe, so who knows how many Romulans or Romo-Vulcanoids down there would be really upset to learn that Spock's or depressed to learn that Spock's sister was a loser. I also
put the actual definition of dissembler, and it's like a hypocrite, a phony, exactly. Like
phony.
Pretend,
it seems like specifically I saw a thing that's like it's about concealing one's motives and beliefs and stuff like that. There is a sense of duplicity to it.
Pretender.
Well, the from the Navarian point of view, this technology, the data apparently could be used to extrapolate and perhaps recreate the technology. And apparently the technology is such a threat to the galaxy that they tried to say, no, it's too dangerous. We shouldn't be futzing with this. We're going to turn everybody into salamanders. And Starfleet said, the Federation said, no, keep doing it.
I can understand where they're coming
Salamander
from.
Breach 19. That's what it really is. That's what it is.
SB19.
SB19. You just nailed it.
I also thought it was so cool that the Romulans were the ones who wanted to stay in the Federation, and the Vulcans were the ones who voted to leave.
Yeah.
I thought that was neat. Like, it would have been so
return of the Enterprise era Vulcans.
A little bit, but it would have been so easy to make the Romulans be the dicks, but it's
for sure.
And not even like the Vulcans aren't even that big of dicks, because I can understand they're like, the Federation is so desperate for dilithium they might do something irresponsible, so we need to be extra responsible, and if that means leaving the Federation, so be it. And like, it kind of makes the whole thing even more tragic, because you can see where they're coming from, and the idea of like the Federation being broken down, it hurts.
It's what Burnham said earlier. It's like the Vulcans would never leave the Federation, so something bad really had to have happened for that to happen.
Later on in this episode, when Saru is talking to the president and he's kind of doing the, hey, the Federation's changed, it's different. I was thinking that of the value of the Qowat Malat absolute candor, because I'm like, well, what have you seen? 3 weeks of the Federation, Saru? I don't know if you can really make that judgment.
No, that was a question I was going to bring up. Does we can Saru is qualified to talk about the ethics of the crew of Discovery. Is Saru qualified to, and Michael for that matter, because she also states the Federation will not betray you. Basically, are they qualified to make that statement about the Federation?
I think within the show. I think the show wants us to believe that it has shown us enough of the Federation that they are telling the truth, that the Federation isn't at its core duplicitous. The showrunners don't want it to be duplicitous. So like it's kind of a slightly meta thing, but like in real life, like I don't think that I would say that they are. For the show's purposes, I think they are supposed to be able to judge it.
Yeah, and I feel like they've been working with them really closely. They've like Saru and the
that refit
crew,
time. There was like 3 weeks or something, right? Like
then we can assume there's probably been another 2 weeks in addition to that. But they've been like eating and breathing Federation HQ, all of that stuff for like the last month and a half or so or whatever. Like if somebody
came to America for like 2 months, would they be qualified to judge American values?
Well,
they probably already knew about American values before they showed up. So
even so, like if the America of 1,000 years in the future,
that's a good point.
If George Washington showed up today and hung out for a month, would he be qualified to state the values of America?
By the way, I'm sure sci-fi stories have explored those kind of things, but I do think that a quiet sci-fi story about something like that would be instructional to somebody who'd like really research George Washington and could kind of write him in a realistic way. And I think that'd be cool.
I had to laugh because I just see George Washington going bonkers if he were thrust suddenly.
He'd probably be like, I'll have to think about this for a little bit. Can you have one of the slaves bring me a cup of tea so I can think?
Cut to him watching TV, Fathery, and then it's one of those ones where a statue of his is being pulled down now. He's like,
to get back on the episode, did you notice how Gabriel is able to completely read Michael to a scary degree with just a few seconds of conversation? And I kind of ended up feeling like that's not Mother's intuition. That's some weird Quolat Malat Betty Jesuit.
Well, she's also been watching her whole life from like her Red Angel suit. She watched this.
Yeah, but she hasn't watched her for the last year apparently. So, and that's what she's immediately calling her on. Is she's like, you're not sure if you want to stay on this starship or not.
I like the idea of presenting this and subsequent examples of the Qowat Malat as preternaturally, preternatural profilers, I guess I'd say, able to really just Sherlock Holmes somebody's motives very quickly. Beyond, in a way that does really seem like.
Even though Elnor got confused about like people going undercover.
Elnor's a kid. He was
in the Qowat Malat a lot longer than Gabriel Burnham.
But he's clearly he's kind of emotionally compromised. He doesn't have the.
They don't teach all the good tricks to the males.
Well, arguably,
boys are dumber than women in general, in my observation.
Wedding the Qowat Malat philosophy with maybe Vulcan logic is maybe what's really kind of elevated it.
Oh yeah, that's a great point.
Maybe. Well, let's talk about the quorum itself.
And the I guess I'm
going to run through like the whole quorum from beginning to end because it's actually not that much that happens in this ceremony. But yeah, the crew kind of gathers to spectate in their mess hall, their redressed mess hall. They paint the floor red. They bring in the three peers. Burnham presents her case to them, and the Vulcans are very adamant about not wanting to turn over this data. And Michael's mom does throw her under the bus here and kind of explains all these reasons why you shouldn't trust Michael Burnham. And she is actually kind of cynical in her motivation. She's not actually like looking out for the Federation. She has like this weird obsession with having to be the center of attention. And she mutinied at the binary stars less than 48 hours ago. She was demoted for disobeying a direct order. And maybe you shouldn't trust her. She's always human, even though she was raised on this Vulcan world. She desires to put herself in these important situations to fill this emotional void that she has. She's kind of defective emotionally because of that, and it's really harsh. Watching it, you kind of feel sorry for Michael. She's just getting beat up by her mom, and then,
exposed at the innermost level.
we see her like so vulnerable here, and then she asks her. She says, why do you question your place in Starfleet? And Michael has to take on some of that absolute candor and do some inner reflection and really say what's going on with her. And she says that she feels like the stakes are higher. She's so scared of doing the wrong thing that might hurt her crew, that she just feels like so much more pressure right now. And now that she's kind of like exposed herself, and President Tarina is watching all this, now that she's kind of been open and honest, now her mom says, okay, now she speaks with truth. Now you can decide if this is the person that you want to trust with this sensitive data or not. And the Vulcans say, okay, we appreciate your candor, but that's not good enough. We still don't want to turn it over. And the Romulo Vulcans are like, well, maybe we do. And the Romulans are kind of like, fuck you. If the Vulcans ain't going to give it to her, then the Romulans will. And Michael sees this divide that she create. I guess like she sees herself becoming the dissembler here. And so she says, you know what? My brother wouldn't want y'all to fight over this. I'm not going to undo his accomplishment. If y'all can't agree, I'm just going to send y'all my data. I'm not going to be the one who broke up Navari. And she rings the gong, ends the ceremony.
That was super touching.
Yeah, takes back her claim to her request for the data, leaves the room, and because it's Star Trek Discovery, it has to be like so ceremonious, and everyone like stands up at attention for her when she leaves. But it does leave an impression on President Tarina. So, what do you think about the quorum and everything that transpired there?
Well, it appears we might be getting, it's hard to tell because this is, of course, a Vulcan ritual or ceremony that we are seeing here, but we might be getting a glimpse into what the QM, Quillat Malat, did for the Romulan Star Empire, which I thought was fascinating. If they do have some Bene Gesserit ability to read people, they are the only way to get an honest answer out of anyone, and that might be the reason their order is allowed to exist in a world where everyone else is lying and no one and the Tal Shiar and the Quelat Malat are enemies. They might, they might have a special skill that allows them to be useful as maybe in court and stuff. And that could be what they bring to the table. And of course, once they're integrated with Vulcan society, this place of where you're testing the purity of intention of people regarding the dissemination of data, this ritual, that would be a natural fit for a place to have them. So I can see why they might be all of the advocates are Quelat Malat. So I liked how that kind of synthesized together a lot. That I love that they all had Romulan shoulder pads.
I loved all of that stuff, Brian. As someone who really loves the Quorum Malat, like I was saying, they're one of my favorite new contributions to Star Trek of like the last few years. So I love them being so essential to the story here, and the idea like that function that they would play in this Vulcan Romulan society is very neat.
Yeah. To me, the callbacks to TOS were nice too. Just having this like ceremony with the gong and the torches and like like that kind of thing. It was very Vulcan in that sense, and like the formality of it and calling everyone a peer and like all that stuff was very like I loved it, and it reminded me of like that TOS Vulcan kind of vibe. So I ate that up, and then I just really liked that. Kind of, and I was saying this earlier, that it just felt like a relief to me that I feel like something clicked in Burnham's character and it was well conveyed, and I hope it's like something that goes on, but like I feel like she released something here that was very important for this character to get past, because I'd been kind of annoyed with her the whole season, and I felt like she has been holding something's just been gnawing at me about her character this season. And I normally love Burnham a lot more than I have this season, and then this episode it kind of made sense, and as Dom, a friend of mine, said, now when I watch the season again, knowing this outcome will make me less annoyed at those things that I was annoyed at before.
That happens a lot for me as well.
Yeah.
I always knew that this whole "do I belong on the ship" thing was going to come to a head at some point. I didn't know this was going to be the episode or how it was going to be done. I will admit, the first time I saw this, I mentioned, is this a little too much, Michael? The question I came away with is, do we learn anything new about Michael? Because pretty much everything she acknowledges is stuff other people have already pointed out to her when talking to her and talking about her. So, and then rewatching it, I said, the thing that it felt to me I learned, I don't think this has been stated before, is that because she had such a shitty childhood that was constantly spinning out of control with people trying to kill her intentionally or accidentally, that she's kind of a control freak, or at least whenever she sees a threat or a danger, she proactively goes after it before it can come after her. And I thought, okay, that kind of helps justify and explain why she acts the way she does, why she's so dog with a bone on some of these ideas and stuff, is because sitting around waiting for other people to solve these problems just gets you at a Vulcan training camp that's on fire or something like that. You know, you can't just trust. You can't wait for. You have to save yourself, and then you save everybody else.
In the comments, Thrust-Free K says, "I call Michael Burnham the Kobe Bryant of Discovery, too legit to quit."
I did
Brian,
question.
you were talking about you were saying that that we had heard these kind of criticisms or self-examinations from Burnham before, and I think that's true. But I don't know if it was true, like if she really took it internally until her mom called her out.
I don't know if it was
season 1 had a lot of that, and I kind of thought like the theme of season 1 of Discovery was self-reflection. And, like if you've made mistakes, like owning up to them and learning to accept that about yourself and improving yourself and moving on. I think that was like a big part of and that kind of ties in like the mirror universe and the idea of like reflection and self-reflection.
Yeah. And this carried that on, but instead of just admitting she has a mistake, she makes mistakes. This was her, I think, nailing down why she makes the mistakes.
Well, that idea
why
that
does
her
she
mom
keep making
presents about the emotional void, about how like maybe like she didn't get enough love as a kid. Like she always feel like the reason why she's like this responsibility whore that they've described her as, like she has to take on like all the burden, all the responsibility and get shit done. The reason why she feels like that is because she needs to feel important and like put herself in like put herself in the spotlight, even though like it's not fun once you get there, but like she feels like this need to like be involved and stuff. I thought that was like really interesting, and I was
it feels pretty psychologically real, even if we know the writers sometimes stumble a little bit about like seeming to know where they want to push a plot point, but I feel that that's pretty psychologically real,
and it checks out with like the character that we've been watching for 3 seasons. It doesn't feel like, oh, that's just something the writers shoehorned in there because they thought that would like sound good in the moment. Like no, like it actually works. It actually fits in.
It was important that Burnham reached the critical point she did in the quorum of like withdrawing her thing. That was, I think, also an act of humility for someone who's kind of been in some ways very ego driven. She's been a little bit, I know what's best for everyone.
Yes.
And
yes, the person who's like, I'm gonna nerve
pinch
my captain and take command.
Yeah.
It's like that. That was literally how we're introduced to her.
Yeah,
so there's growth. There is a clear.
Not a good look.
There is a question I had about that sequence where they say the stakes have never been higher, and I'm like, last season, all life in the galaxy was up for grabs. This season, we're just trying to figure out why dilithium got
not only
on.
that, but 2 seasons ago, the stakes were the entire multiverse, which is the highest of the entire franchise.
That's
the highest of any franchise. Let's be real.
Yeah,
there ain't nothing higher than a multiverse.
Yeah, the stakes have never been higher. No, this is the lowest staked season so far, which I'm fine with. I'd like smaller. I'm not saying this is a criticism. I just thought that throwing that line in there was kind of dumb. I would have left that.
Yeah, they've started to occasionally. This is one of those things. This happens kind of. It's sort of a weird thing in superhero comics sometimes, where it's like, well, didn't she actually throw out? She's like, well, I did save all life in the universe. As that's like, now on her that can go on her resume, and I'm like, that's a pretty big thing. But it's one of those things where if you really wrap your head around the enormity of it, it would change who you are and how people would think about everything. And then it's almost too big for us to kind of fully wrap our heads around.
Yeah. No, she was doing her job as a Starfleet officer when she jumped through that wormhole. Admiral Vance.
I think PJ brought up a good point on a discussion we had, which was that like they keep saying universe, but it's really just the galaxy, and then even then they wouldn't have the control wasn't after any life forms that it deemed whatever like.
Well, I think they had they had some sort of projection of the future or something where all life was wiped out.
Sentient life
in the galaxy, not
the galaxy. Yeah.
But on Discovery, she even says universe constantly, and I'm like, no, it was just the galaxy. As far as
they kind of use galaxy and universe energy.
Oh, did they? I got that. That's annoying. Now that I know it.
Sorry.
Are there any other thoughts on the Quorum before we move on to the post-Quorum stuff?
I wanted to say that, I pointed out earlier, Michael basically throws the chance of diplomatic reconnection under the bus in order to get the data. And then she finishes it by saying, when that was a mistake, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Let me try, I'm not going to demand this data anymore because I don't want to cause, more diplomatic strife and break up more social groups. Also, the fact that things escalate that quickly clearly shows that things on Navari are not perfect. It was not some nice, perfect government down there. There's the idea that things could this quickly go to hell.
It might have been better off before the burn, because they said that like the burn and so many of us, taking responsibility for that, it has had major political and social ramifications. So for all we know, it might have been much more unified. And then after the burn, after this last 120 years is when the cracks and the foundation of this joint culture, really started to crack open.
Yeah,
Burnham
there might have even been.
Them.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not going to go down.
I think Burnham may have reminded them of like how important it is to keep working at that unification, which I like as well. So that just kind of is a little icing on that cake.
Yeah, together we are, but we can't be alone. Like that Dropkick Murphys song, "The Boys on the Docks."
Nice, odd segue, but I like it. I was just going to say that although I usually want Discovery to be a little bit more thoughtful, I also found, ironically, the Quorum slightly boring at times.
But this was a more thoughtful episode than what we're used to in Discovery.
I agree.
But I was not really bored. I was just kind of for me, it's a kind of just a relief to just kind of have like this more chill, just real talky episode. This tamer. I think I said more tame earlier. It was a tamer episode of Discovery.
But the stakes have never been higher.
No, that's a little melodramatic flair. Let's talk about the post-Quorum stuff. We get this heart-to-heart moment between Mama Burnham and Michael. And I'm hoping this is kind of letting us know that they've kind of fixed this ongoing drama with Michael, that now that she's going to be less conflicted between doing her duty and being this new 32nd century Michael that she wants to be, and how your duty and your joy can go hand in hand, and you don't have to feel the conflict between the person you were and the person you are now. So I'm hoping that we're kind of transitioning past that. I've been vocal about being kind of annoyed with that being an ongoing thing.
I liked it, but I think this is the episode to put it to bed. I think that should not be a thing going forward.
And now that they have like a dramatic thing they can do with the book about like, oh, you're gonna stay on the ship. How am I gonna be in your life? And like that's a more interesting drama for me, in my opinion. But I like this idea of that because Michael did the right thing and was being honest and gave in to the absolute candor, that left such an impression on the president that she decided that Michael was trustworthy and she turns over the data anyways. I know it's kind of plot convenience, but I liked the moral of the story.
I think Saru had a little bit to do with it too.
Yeah, and I want to talk about Saru and Tarina in a second. Yeah. But that was cool that Michael gets the W. She wins here, and even though I was annoyed how they made her mom into a co-op Malat in a very inorganic way. I loved this so much when she says, "I've always wanted to tell you this, Michael, for so many years, but now, if you need me, you know where to find me." That was such a sweet moment. And just the fact that Michael can have, none of these people on the Discovery can have that in this 32nd century. She's the only only one who gets to have a family member. So it's so I'm so happy for this character who's just been through so much shit for 3 seasons for her to have this happy moment of joy.
That that adds another layer of complexity because Tilly was missing her mother earlier, and now I'm kind of seeing that earlier scene that I criticized. Remember in previous episodes, she was mentioning I'll never, even though she doesn't like her mother, she's like, I'll never see my mom again.
Well, she gave this long list of things that she'll never see again.
Right. I guess, but I don't know. I have to go back and watch, but I felt there was an emphasis on the mom thing, and maybe this could explain a little bit more resentment later on from Tilly and stuff like that.
And Michael can now has a trump card for any your mama jokes on this ship. Your mama dead, mine's still alive.
By the way, did she look like she got an old floppy disk from her?
I was thinking about that, but what are you going to show in the 32nd century that they would use stored data on? So for all we know, this thing is just this is a little convenient handheld device that scans your DNA to see if you're the right person, and then opens a holographic portal into this quantum realm where all of the Vulcan data is stored. And you get access to whatever permission.
I think it looks cool. It's got the look of both being a piece of technology and a little bit of that Vulcan ritualistic, marbleized or something like that on it.
You can also use it as a coaster to set your beer can on top of.
And it's gold because this is the gold. This is the win. So it's got that little gold ring on it.
It's like you get a gold medal.
Gold
presented
medal
by the president.
Do we have any speculation as to why they seem very certain that this data shows the Vulcan that the SB-19 was responsible for the burn, and obviously and all the other data Michael's found is pointing to it not being responsible. Do we have any idea how this is all going to fit together?
Nope.
Okay.
One thing I've enjoyed about the last few episodes, I haven't been watching any of the Next Time on an All New Star Trek bits, and so I don't know what's going to happen, and I've been sort of shocked at some of the twists and turns,
especially now, going forward. We're halfway through it. We're actually one episode over halfway as of right now. I don't watch any of the previews week to week. I don't watch the clip on Ready Room. When they get to the clip part, I turn off Ready Room. I don't watch that. And all the stuff I remember from the trailers going into the season, I feel like I've already seen it. We knew, Michael was going to meet this guy, Book, who has a cat, and the Discovery was going to crash somewhere else, but they would eventually team back up. They were going to meet some Trill. They were going to meet some future Starfleet people. They were going to go to Earth and hug a tree, and eventually they're going to meet some Vulcan people. Okay, we've done all of that. I have no idea what happens in the remaining half of the season. No idea at all. And I love that. That excites me.
Q will be in every episode.
I think that
he's a new team member on the disco.
I think we have to ask, where are the Remans, and are they not the only ones who have? Aren't they the only ones that have
Remans
the
are
motive?
dead. The Remans died in the Nova.
To cause the burn and blame it on the Vulcans. I
would love if when they finally do an episode on Navari to see some Remans in society. That would be the coolest.
I think all the Remans died because it's cheaper makeup to do Vulcans and Romulans than it is to do Remans.
They got a budget on this show.
They could easily crank out a Reman.
Let's talk about President Tarina and the stuff going on with her and Saru in this
You mean his
episode.
president girlfriend?
I loved it. Yes,
I
same
didn't-
thing here for sure.
Someone say that, suggest that online. I thought that was so weird. It was
No.
like a very professional relationship. But I like seeing over the course of the episode Saru, who've often been told but rarely shown that he's this very empathetic person. But I like seeing here, like, he kind of listens to her. You know, he kind of hears her out. She says that, well, we actually had like a bunch of grievances with the Federation, and they have like these neat moments. They're at the Quorum sitting together, you know, spectating side by side in the seats, and then at the end they kind of do like the live long and prosper hand jives to each other before she beams back down. But Saru has like this friend on Vulcan, and there's a doorway where you can see how Navari would come back into the Federation, and it's because of Saru being good Starfleet diplomat as the ship's captain. So I liked all that. What did y'all think about that stuff?
Oh, I wanted to make that comment. For those people who are still complaining that Saru is not captain's material, I think this episode argues strongly against that. We not only do we see that he manages to make progress, but we get to not only does he make progress, we get to see him making progress. It's not just, oh, I just got back from meeting with the Vulcans and they like me now. No, we get to see how he does it. We get to see him do it in a Saru way and use his talents. And I really enjoyed seeing all of that unfold. And I think to some degree, that's what helps sell the president on turning over the data, is getting to interact with a Starfleet captain and see what Starfleet is like these days.
Yeah, these people are all right. And they wrote some good dialogue in there. I liked when they talk about like the needs of the many and the needs of the few. And Saru's like, yeah, didn't you people come up with that? And she says, we've moved on past maxims and proverbs. And it was weird that he kind of retorts with like a very like fortune cookie type saying back to her. But he actually says that, you know, it sounds like a really high price was paid, but the lessons that we learn most are the ones that do have like this heavy price. And I like that idea, that kind of like the silver lining, is that when you go through shit like this that's very costly, the benefit is that it's always easy to learn from that experience.
Well, you know, it's interesting to reflect that on Burnham's own experience with the Quorum, where she has this what's like sort of costly exchange with her mother that's really emotionally difficult, but arguably is her maybe the most important lesson in her, you know, in her growth.
In the course of the show. The whole time we've been watching her.
I have a sort of fascination sometimes with movies and shows where someone has to be sort of pushed to a certain limit, you know, sometimes cruelly or whatever, you know, V for Vendetta, but also, what was that movie? Oh gosh, Black Snake Moan, if anybody's ever seen that with Sam Jackson and Christina Ricci. Or even The Game from
it sounds
David
like you want to like kidnap a younger woman and like just kind of like torture her until she's indoctrinated into your views.
Yeah, that's what I like. I want more of that. That and have y'all ever seen The Game from David Fincher?
Yes,
I have not.
It's another one of those where, without saying too much about it, because I think it's one of his best and unsung movies, but Michael Douglas is subjected to a fascinating barrage of experiences, and it's interesting to see how that stimuli sort of works through on him. And I don't want to say too much about it.
Yeah, it's good to not be spoiled on that movie.
Yeah,
you should watch it the first time not knowing.
But it's I think that that aphorism kind of works. I think Saru is in the right there, and that it's a. You know, it's kind of a trial by fire type stuff of things. Sometimes things have to be tested that hard.
I did like the comment that with the something to the effect of that similarity can lead to less trust. If you're not exactly the same, but close to being the same, it can actually cause a lot more friction than if you're too wildly different. And because there's this kind of uncanny valley of, well, they're kind of like me, but not enough like me. kind of thing going on, that you'll see like different factions of Christianity fighting amongst themselves far more viciously than they would with, say, Buddhists or something, which are, a very different kettle of
it's
fish.
a more nuanced thing that's a little harder for our ape brain to categorize.
And they didn't dwell on it, but it was a little thing they threw out that I thought that was really another interesting idea there. There's all these little great lines of dialogue that you can sit there and ponder and think about a bit.
When she lived long and prospered and then beamed out, I thought that was interesting. She takes a few seconds after she did it before she beamed out, and I was like, oh, that's a bit of ceremony probably to a Vulcan. She probably could have been live long and prosper, insta beam out. But she was like, there's a little bit of understanding of social graces at this point, and she gave it a few seconds.
Yeah, Saru had owned that little moment of respect.
Yeah.
And I can see, like, if this was a novel or something, you would write in there that, like, she took like a few seconds, which was a subtle thing that a human probably wouldn't notice, but like for a Vulcan, it was like a huge gesture of respect.
Navarin girlfriend.
Let's transition to the B story of the episode, which was Tilly's big promotion. I'm just going to run through that real quick, and then we can talk about it. But now Saru asks Tilly to become the acting first officer now that Michael Burnham has been bumped off from the XO position. And Tilly is kind of unsure at first, and Saru tells her it will take a day to think about it. So Tilly goes down to the Spore Cube and has a private conversation with Stamets, who had like some really interesting reactions to what he's being told.
Exactly.
And he's like, oh, this is so weird. It would be weird to take orders from you. But he is ultimately, even though like he's weirded out by it and surprised by it, he is ultimately like a little supportive. And so supportive, in fact, that he rounds up a lot of the crew, and they're hanging out in engineering, and Tilly comes in, and they all tell her in like this big kind of emotional moment. They're all like, say yes to Saru. Like everyone gets a close up saying, say yes. And then Michael Burnham comes in. She's like, I have the data. Oh, I'm sorry I was late for like the say yes part, but you should totally say yes. And then Tilly is crying, and then Michael is crying, and everyone's crying. And Tilly is like, okay, I guess I'll be the first officer. And everyone is clapping, and they have to have like this big moment to like pat themselves on the back because it is Star Trek Discovery. And they like to have like these big, showy, ceremonious, emotional moments that are just drawn out way too long. And then they all have like a big group hug. What do y'all think about this B story?
I didn't disagree with anything fundamentally that happened with this story. I just disagreed with like maybe 50% of the execution, and it was all centered around like the overt kind of. Like they stretched it out, I think, a little too long. I think Tilly should have been a little more confident about it. I also think that there were some things that I would have liked more in ceremony. I would have liked her to have been promoted to a lieutenant as well as be the first officer. And frankly, if I had my way, I would have given Tilly this moment in a whole different episode, like later on, or maybe I would have just shortened it. I thought I wanted Unification 3 to be more about the Navarans and Burnham.
Yeah. Well, this is the counterpoint. This is the counterpoint to Michael. Michael is the person who always thinks she's right, who always wants to do things her way, and has maybe too much confidence. And then Tilly is the person who is shirking away from authority, and so she's coming at it from a completely opposite direction. So she's unsure if she's ready to do the thing, whereas Michael needs to learn that maybe I don't always need to do the thing. So I can kind of see how, at least on paper, when they were putting it together, how this really was like, this bounce back and forth between approaching the same idea from two different directions. My first reaction was, this is so Kelvin universe. And I think I thought about it a bit. I think I would have been, and to some degree, this is already my headcanon, if Saru had just said, he says he's going to get a real first officer at some point, doesn't he? He says this
right.
is just temporary.
Yeah.
So,
and that's why I'm okay with it, because we actually earlier this year on another Star Trek show, we saw an ensign become
I had forgotten about
XO
that.
very, very shortly. And if you look at like the USS Valiant on Deep Space Nine, all those kids are just promoting the shit out of each other. So with those filled promotion, so it is possible to do like these like weird temporary act. Like Wesley Crusher was an acting ensign before he ever set foot in the academy. I don't think it's completely out of the question for Tilly to be acting first officer for a short period of time. If this goes on longer than the season, yeah, it would be like weird and annoying and not make a ton of sense. And I also agree. I said previously, I think Tilly probably should be promoted to a lieutenant at this time, but I just want to take credit. I called it out episodes ago. Like they're doing all these like Saru Tilly scenes. I think they're building something. And our friend Trek on the Tube pointed out to me, he's like, no, these are just all a bunch of friends of the writers, and they're just using whatever character to interact with Saru. And Dave, I think you might have agreed with that. But I was like, no, I think there's a pattern here. They're doing this different type of stuff with Tilly that they would typically do with an ensign on a Star Trek show. So I think this is what they were building to.
I don't think that's necessarily in conflict with it. It means that it just indicates the show writers aren't really concerned about rank or only in a very kind of distant way. That they do sort of see this as friends, and I do think like Saru promoted one of his a friend that he sees as a good counselor and somebody who he sees a lot of promise in. So I think that still actually all fits together. But it is an indicative though of that those scenes did exist to set that up. That is for sure.
Yeah, our friend Jeremiah in the chat says it's probably going to be more like an internship for Tilly, and that's what I'm kind of thinking. Yeah, I think by the end of the show, by the end of the season, they will have Burnham will have her shit together enough that she'll be XO again, or maybe Saru will get captured or injured or something, and Michael becomes captain. I prefer the former over the latter, but I think this will just be a season 3 thing of First Officer Tilly.
Looking at the comments, I saw that Jeremiah D. This is interesting. Said that this scene was their favorite part and enjoyed the mushiness of the scene. So just to give someone else who was like, to me, it was one of those ones that was on the edge, but. It's interesting to see some people who were like, "Yeah, I love it."
And to me, it wasn't on the edge. It was like way over the edge. It was like way too much forced emotion.
I didn't mind all the schmaltziness, given how much hell this crew has been through. I'm sure they'd all, be quite huggy at this point, especially with Tilly. Tilly brings the hugs.
Voyager. That crew went through some shit.
Yeah, well, Voyager wasn't well written, in my opinion, but
I think they've had a lot of what would feel like very big moments in rapid succession. Jump to the future together, just rediscover Starfleet together, reunite with their first officer Burnham together. It does feel like a lot of big and in some cases very positive things have happened to them in a short period of time. They just got a big upgrade to their ship. I kind of feel like, in a way, as although they're in a very rough situation, they've had a number of positive things happen, and it feels like they're all kind of upbeat right now.
Yeah. Well, I think Tilly kind of brings the hugs too. I mean,
I agree.
I don't know if everyone would have been hugging each other if this hadn't been a situation involving Tilly and she hadn't been in the room. I think it would have gone down.
If Jet Reno had gotten a promotion, that they'd be like,
exactly.
That would make more sense because I believe she's actually a commander, and I think Culber is a commander. I actually think Culber would have made a good first officer. But, they went with
Jet
Tilly.
Would have been hilarious, and
that's why she would never get it, because she's not a good people person.
Well, no, the job of the first officer traditionally is to be the asshole who whips the crew into line. She could do that.
You're also supposed to be like the advocate of the crew back to the captain.
Well, yes, but in private, in the ready room. Outside of that, you treat them. Your job is to whip them into shape.
The outside the in fiction version of this is that it clearly means that the writers wish to do more with Tilly and that they want to evolve her. And I do think it'll be interesting because so much of the character is kind of predicated on a kind of cute awkwardness, and she's going to have to literally, as of next episode, start giving people commands and not showing hesitation, or finding maybe they have some other way that she's going to command. I don't know quite what it would be, but it'll be interesting to see where they want to take her, and I think the actress will be up for it. I of course like Mary Weiss.
I am open. Something from the very first season when it might have been like, I can't remember what episode it was exactly, when they brought this to the forefront, but she wants to make captain. And so I like that they're keeping her on that trajectory. And they even do mention like the command training program and stuff like that here.
I wanted them to say, I wanted Saru to say, this will be excellent training for you. And just that one line, I think in my head canon, that's what's going on. That this is more about giving her a chance to get some experience.
What Jeremiah was saying about it being an internship.
This is what I wanted.
And there's a precedent. There's a precedent in the franchise, like making Wesley an acting ensign. Like there's like enlisted people like O'Brien on the Enterprise. Like I guess they were taking orders from like this kid who ain't even been to the academy, but I mean it was like practice. It's like like an internship.
Yeah, it's just the fact that they spelled it out a little better with Wesley than they did here. Here they kind of said, "You're ready for this," and I think Saru should have said, "You're ready to learn how to do this." If he put it that contextualized it that way, I would have been fine with it. And to my mind, I think that's kind of how I'm going to view it, even though it wasn't said out loud.
Well, that's a way I hadn't thought of it, and I'm open to later in the season this becoming less annoying because of some scene or revelation that makes it just how I got less annoyed at Burnham. So I'm open to it.
Anything else before I move into the Gorn Eggs?
I loved Michael's. I missed the cool. You missed the cool yes, say yes part. That I laughed hard at that. I'm not sure if I needed all the schmaltz, but that part was beautiful.
I like that. I liked her saying like, "Oh, I guess you're gonna like order me to like switch beds in our room now." Which I'd be more like, "Why do y'all still share a room? There's only 88 people on the ship."
I think Tilly wants to have a roommate, and Michael's okay with it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. It'd be funny to like find out they've got all these empty rooms, but they've just been like dealing with it because they both like the situation.
Yeah, well, I think in the first episode, doesn't Tilly have some lines about they say I need a roommate to keep me grounded or something like that, and like
no, she actually says I'm not allowed to have a roommate.
Oh, okay, you're right.
Snore.
Okay, I
so it was like the opposite.
Misremembered that. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, I guess now like Michael can just like go bunk with Book as long as he's hanging out in the shuttle.
Oh yeah,
well, yes.
He's going over to his apartment. He conveniently, which is parked in the cargo bay.
And I guess they're just like getting it on in like that bedroom / bridge with like the window open, like exposed to like the back of the house. Another ship can come by and see them.
Well,
you know what?
Programmable matter shades. Come on.
As Tilly is in many ways. The episode, What Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad, indicated that she's no stranger to relationships. I think she and Michael need to have a double date with their partners. I want to see this in an episode.
That'd be some pillar filler that the show doesn't always have time for.
Yeah,
I'd like to see it.
I just want to say before you go to the Gorn Eggs that this discussion was a lot of fun. It made me think of things in a way I hadn't thought of before, so I really appreciate that. But I also just want to say that like I think this is the episode I've watched the most this season. I've watched it 5 times, and I just haven't gotten tired of it. I think I may watch it one more time, but I feel like there's so much new lore and world building and interesting things that are compelling about it. And I just kind of like was watching it to see if I can glean anything else. And I'm looking forward to seeing more.
I was talking about it with a coworker at work today. And they asked me what I thought of it, and I was like, I liked it, but I'm still wrapping my head around it, because sometimes when they drop an episode that has a lot of lore that's clearly very meaningful to Star Trek canon and to longtime viewers, like my brain just can't process it all immediately. And
you had to chew on it a little bit. I had like a little bit of that. I had a little bit of that reaction. I kind of came around more on my second viewing.
I guess I have to admit my reaction was, okay, reunification happened. Of course it did. I expected it to. What? Show us the details. How did it go down? And we didn't get any details. Almost no details.
That's going to be in Unification 2.5.
Yeah.
Which will be on Picard.
That'll be on. Coming soon to Star Trek Picard.
Yeah,
it's going to be in lower decks actually.
That does stop Picard from ever playing this trick, doesn't it? Because they can't do it. 2.5 would look silly, especially in Roman numerals. How
do you write decimal 5 in Roman?
There's got to be a way, but I don't know what it is. I did want to say about the Michael and Michael and Book thing at the end. I mean, they Michael was basically willing to give up her career in Starfleet to go rescue Book and get the black box. And then now it's on Book. Is Book willing to give up his courier career to be with Michael?
Yeah, the tables have turned.
Yeah,
and it kind of bookends the show with the beginning and the end is with her with Book. But yeah, she says that he feels like home to her, and he says, "Yeah, like you feel like home to me." So there's now a conflict of like, okay, Book doesn't want to leave her side, but she is firmly rooted back on the ship. So what's going to happen there?
Well,
I was saying that is a more interesting drama. That's a more interesting drama than Michael being like, "Oh, am I going to follow the rules or just be an asshole who does whatever I want?"
Yeah.
Should they have played the Phil Phillips song?
Yeah. How does Book interact with Discovery is certainly a question that needs to be answered. You could take that. You feel like home as a statement of, well, if you're here, I'm here. And that's the end of that discussion.
They're just going to let them take up their whole fucking shuttle bay. He does help them out. And Neelix did that. Neelix did that shit on Voyager. And we're going to put up with Neelix. Might as well do it for Book.
But Neelix had a crappy ship, and it magically managed to disappear and not take up any room except when they remembered it existed. Yeah. Whereas this ship is pretty big, but it is a really awesome ship. It's the Millennium Falcon,
as we saw last week. So I'm just going to go ahead and run through the Gorn Eggs. These are all of the Easter eggs, in-jokes, and continuity connections that I found within the episode. If I miss any, people should let me know, and I'll give you credit for it. I'm just going to go ahead and get started, though. In the science lab scene, they mentioned the ship, the USS Yelchin. That was the first black box that Michael recovered. And that
4747 or 4774.
Part of the registry number was 4774, but we don't see the entire thing. It was obscured. Right. But we can assume that the Yelchin was named after Anton Yelchin, the actor who played Chekhov in the Kelvin movies, and unfortunately passed away 4 years ago, I believe.
Very tragically.
Yeah, very unfortunate. He was extremely young. There was also a ship named the Gavnor. I don't know if that was... it sounds kind of Klingon to me. I'm sure Larry Nemechek, our friend Larry, is probably saying that it's connected to Ambassador Gav, the Tellarite from Journey to Babel. But there is a ship called the Gavnor. There's also a ship called the Giocani or Giocani. It was named after the Nobel Prize-winning astrophysicist who laid down the foundations of X-ray astronomy. The planet Navar, the word Navar is the name of a Vulcan ship we saw on Enterprise in the episode Shadows of Pajim. But the word Navar existed in the fandom long before that. It was a term that was created in around 1967 by the linguist Dorothy Jones, who wrote the Dorothy and May Fawny series of Star Trek stories in the T-negative fanzine in the late 60s, early 70s. It is a Vulcan word that literally means to form. And so that was kind of a great idea for what you would call like a two-form society, like Romulans and Vulcans united. So that is an extremely deep cut.
That's heavy shit.
Kirsten Beyer, who's also a Star Trek novelist who wrote this episode. I'm sure.
So Father, that was essentially this is like an ultimate fan shout out, right?
Yeah, but it was also shouted out back in 2002 on Enterprise. But here even more appropriately.
That's very cool.
Very nice.
Admiral Vance mentions involving the diplomatic corps with Burnham's mission to Navari. The diplomatic corps were first mentioned on screen in Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country. But this is, I guess, the Federation ambassadors are kind of all part of the diplomatic corps. Curzon, who mentioned a lot in Deep Space Nine, Sarek, Spock, all the ambassador characters. The appearance of Spock was from the episode Unification II. And if you're wondering, how did Jean-Luc Picard get this information for his personal logs? Well, he was actually hanging out with Spock in that episode with an android who records everything he sees and hears. So the answer to that is pretty easily. I know, like if I went somewhere and met a legend like Spock, I want like a home video of that for my personal logs. Data, can you give me like a holographic recording of that? Thanks, bud. I appreciate it. The name Tirina, beginning with like T and an apostrophe, that is a tradition for many Vulcan female characters that dates all the way back to Amok time when we were introduced to T'Pau and T'Pring. You might also know T'Pel was Tuvok's wife, and T'Pol from Enterprise. The Navar logo, like these people are like wearing on their chest, it's real interesting. It's kind of a combination of the Romulan warbird and kind of like the Vulcan Idic with like the circle and the triangle.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the circle and triangle thing, and like straightened it out to make it symmetrical. Like down the middle, left and right, and then they laid that on top of like the Romulan warbird logo thing.
Well, yeah, and the logic behind the Idic emblem was always the triangle and the circle coming together to create this jewel. Two different things coming together to make, right there, to create something beautiful. So mashing them together is actually very appropriate for the symbol. The symbol is all about mashing things together.
On the bridge of the Discovery, Michael Burnham mentions that the Vulcans have engaged in T'Kol and Ket since the time of Surak. Surak being the founder of the Vulcan logic-based philosophy that was first mentioned in the original series episode, The Savage Curtain. And of course, we have the Kowat Malat were brought back up in this episode. That came from Star Trek Picard. Picard himself was a friend of the Kowat Malat, and our favorite character from that show, Elnor, the warrior elf character in Picard. He is, in fact, raised by the Kowat Malat. The gong used in the ceremony was a callback to the gongs used for Vulcan ceremonies in Amok time. There was a gong, and then in Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, there was a Vulcan gong. So they like to ring the gongs. And this was a cool little detail that I picked up on, is that when we see Navar out of a window of the Discovery, you can actually see what appears to be a moon or another planetoid rising on the other side of the planet. And as was established in the first Star Trek episode to ever air, The Man Trap, Vulcan has no moon, except for when it does. In Star Trek: The Motion Picture, we see a moon or a nearby planet. Yeah, in the director's cut, they take that out, but both versions of the movie are considered canon. So make of that what you will. And in the Kelvin timeline, there is a nearby planet of Delta Vega, which was close enough to Vulcan that you could see Vulcan. So I just assumed that, Delta Vega and Vulcan, or Navar as it's known now, are just kind of sister planets. And you can see one from the other, so it all works. All makes sense to me. Those are all of the Gorn Eggs I found, and if I missed anything, y'all let me know.
That was really cool. I think you got them all.
Yeah. I do want to say I laughed hard at Alexandra's comment about Michael's fine with something to the effect of Michael's fine with Tilly becoming first officer because she's going to do whatever she wants no matter who's XO.
It's going to become that much easier with Tilly.
That was Tilly. Yeah, that was funny.
I think Michael might be a little bit more of a functional crew member going forward, but we shall see.
The arc, yeah.
We'll find out more on that possibly next week when we discuss Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 8, The Sanctuary. And that'll be 7:30 p.m. Central Time, Friday. But everyone checking us out live should go take like a 30-minute break and then hop on to Starfleet Boy's channel, because we're about to stream Starfleet Boy After Dark. Starfleet Boy, what are we talking about tonight?
We are talking mainly about the freaking craziest episode of The Mandalorian so far.
Which I have not seen yet, so don't accidentally reveal.
We're not going to say anything. We're just going to be talking a lot about it. I have a lot of questions, so hopefully, Father, you can bring the knowledge.
I have a lot of answers, but I also have a lot of well, I'm not going to say what my thoughts on this episode
are.
You have to watch Starfleet Boy After Dark to find that out.
You have to watch Starfleet Boy After Dark.
Next time on an all-new Starfleet Boy.
That's what we need.
It's starting to become an unofficial tradition to name the Starfleet Boy episode. We'll do it on the After Talk but you guys can name it again. I think
Oh, neat.
you guys did a great job last time.
I'm gonna name it Unification 4.7.
Done. All right, that's it. Done.
All right.
Thank you, Father.
Yeah, and we'll be back streaming Tex-Trek next week. But until then, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek, and follow Fathery on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you, and